So, if you're anything like me as a change management professional, you've spent way too much time drafting communications, summarizing stakeholder feedback, and building out those dreaded status updates that 80% of people only skim anyway. And so, that busy work we all know is necessary, but it can also be mentally exhausting and just really taking energy away from the more value add work that are things that we really want to focus on. Things like listening to our stakeholders, coaching our teams, building trust, and really guiding people through uncertainty. And so, what we're finding now is that we have these tools and we have AI, and it's not there to replace us, but it can really, partner with us as a little digital sidekick assistant to help us, be able to improve what we do by allowing us to focus on those high value areas. And so, today I want to talk a little bit about, ways that change management professionals can use AI, some real world examples, and that's going to be the focus of our talk today. Okay, so the first example I want to talk about is something that ProSci has come out with. And so we all know ProSci is one of the leading names in change management. And they've built a tool called Kaya. I think I'm pronouncing that right. So Kaya AI. It's not just some gimmicky thing either. So I did take a look at it. What's very cool about it, it's been trained on ProSci's body of knowledge, as well as a lot of the research that they've done. And that's, as we all know, like that research is something that a lot of us really benefit from in terms of the processes and, the things that ProSci promotes. And so it really is attuned to thinking in terms of the ADKAR model, sponsorship, communications, resistance management, and so it can be very helpful. And like I said, I played around with it a little bit. I did see some other testimonials from other folks that have used it. And it can really save you a lot of time. I mean, taking something like, say you're going to draft a communication plan, and that can take potentially like 2 hours, as a working session, and then you can get that down, at least a lot of the grunt work to 10 minutes. And again, that really can mean the difference between getting rid of what I think a lot of us consider to be that lower value add busy work. And then instead of taking that time on that, now you freed yourself up to focus on, more strategic things. And so again, I, have seen it, or I did play around with it. I used it for that. And I think that the productivity gains, as well as, again, the fact that it is already aligned to a proven change management methodology, makes it something that's worth exploring for, a lot of people. So, before I delve into some additional use cases, I do want to pause and really, talk about the flip side of all of this. Because again, I'm a big proponent of there is no free lunch, right? And so there was an article that the Harvard Business Review did recently. The title of the article is "I'm afraid we're automating this work without really understanding it." And to me, this is a really, really valid concern and something that all of us should be thinking about as we're putting AI to work for us. Because yes, AI can do things like that. It can crank out documents. It can do some of what we like to consider busy work. But the article really took a different perspective on it, and instead of calling it busy work, it looked at it as something called connective labor. And then that's where we have this, these human interactions. So maybe it's conversations where we're really trying to build context, or these opportunities to be able to really listen to people's concerns and therefore develop and show genuine empathy. And all of that really helps us to tailor our messages, whether that's written messages, communications, to make sure that we have the right nuances for our unique stakeholders for whatever changes that are actually happening. And so trying to hand all of that off to AI, we're really going to risk losing the glue that actually makes these changes stick and make us, I think, pretty valuable in the jobs that we do. Because yes, AI can write the email. AI cannot read the room. AI is not going to know, like, if someone became disengaged because the message did not resonate with them and actually maybe offended them. It can't tell if someone is feeling anxiety because a change is actually going to happen. And so that's where you want to make sure that you're very careful about how you categorize work. And even if it's something that you think, hey, this is like routine and don't really need to do it, there could still be other valid reasons why you want to continue to do that natively versus automatically defaulting to having AI cover it. So I really think that the balance here is, or the key here is balance as well as intentionality. So yes, we want to use AI to help clear the clutter, but we don't want to make sure that we're outsourcing things that we shouldn't be outsourcing, right? As humans. So with that being said, let's get back to a few other practical ways that change managers can use AI today. So, how do we start putting something like this into practice, actually starting to use AI? Well, the one thing that I've learned, and I started out with it, I want to say in early 2024, maybe late 2023. And what I found is that, because we already, as a change management professional, I mean, if you've done it for years, you probably already have a way of doing things. You probably already have like a set of templates, a toolkit. The good news is you don't have to go out and revamp all of that, all at once. You also don't have to really, feel like you have to become an AI expert before you can start using it at all. I started small. I started doing little experiments. And I think that for a lot of people, they're finding that is the best way to go. So, you build your confidence as you start doing things, with what you would consider to be maybe some low risk ways to really just kind of test it out. So we already talked about one really good way, which again is drafting first versions of communications. Again, I'm the kind of person that I prefer to do my own first drafts, but for a lot of people, staring at that blank page, trying to write a stakeholder email, a status report, a sponsorship update, whatever, that first draft for a lot of people is really the hardest part. And, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what is the tone? How should I structure it? And just really getting the words on paper. So AI, if that is your situation, it can really be a powerful tool because instead of wasting time spinning your wheels, you can just hand that part of the job over and then really focus on editing and refining the message. So as an example, because I do a lot of ERP implementations, let's say I need a project update for a Salesforce rollout. I can prompt AI and I can say, hey, I need you to draft a one-page update for executives, highlighting key milestones, risks, and upcoming training sessions. Keep the tone professional but supportive. And within seconds, I'll have a draft. Now, it's probably not going to be perfect, but now I'm editing instead of creating something from scratch. And again, editing, I think for a lot of people is faster. It can be less stressful, and it's just going to free your time up so you can really do some more of that strategic work and making sure that your message is actually going to resonate and then be actionable. So the second thing that you can use AI for is summarizing stakeholder feedback. So this is a big one because if you ever come out of stakeholder interviews or done a survey, you know how messy that data can feel. I mean, I remember just being in a conference room. We did a focus group, and there were just like sticky notes all over the wall. We had spreadsheets with these comments. We had people. They were just repeating themselves basically in different ways, and it was just so much information. It was just like overwhelming. And so now what's great about AI is AI can really help you do that initial first pass to just cut through the noise and really start to categorize and action your data. So for example, you can take your survey results, you can take interview transcripts, and you can ask the tool, okay, let's cluster some themes. So, for example, summarize stakeholder concerns by category. You can say, okay, we have technology, we have training, we have leadership support, we have communication. I want you to highlight any recurring themes of resistance. So that will give you a good starting point. Now, again, just like in the previous example, it's not going to be the final word. I mean, you're still going to have to go through, you want to validate, you want to refine, but it's going to give you a starting point. And so instead of starting with dozens of pages you have to go through, now you're at least starting with a more manageable set of themes that you can test out and determine what makes sense. So again, for those that have worked with grad assistants or have been, research assistants, that, sometimes that's the grunt work that, that has to happen. But now we can kind of focus on, okay, after that part is done, how do we take this and really use these insights for the betterment of our teams? And so the last use case I'll just go through really quickly. This is just brainstorming resistance strategy. So this is one where, because a lot of what we focus on in change is, that naturally occurring resistance that happens because something is going to be different. I mean, and again, I think sometimes people think that is a negative thing and that people are actively pushing back. But, really it's just, hey, we have to make sure that we're setting them up for success to be able to do, something that's going to benefit them or benefit the organization. And so, I think a lot of times if you've done this in the past, it's just so easy to fall to those defaults of, okay, so we're going to need to communicate more. We're going to need to train and how we're going to train. And those things are like super valid. But we can use AI now to get a wider lens of other types of resistance and strategies that we should be able to put in place. So for example, again, working on an ERP cloud migration, I can ask, what are 10 possible reasons employees might resist moving to a cloud system? And the AI can surface things like fear of job loss, data security concerns, even lack of trust in leadership. And then I can say, okay, now let's talk about some strategies to address each reason. And some of them are going to be like really generic and okay, that's fine. But you may be able to take some of that and really have that be a spark to come up with approaches that you may not have thought of on your own. And so it's almost like, again, like a brainstorming partner and just giving you additional ideas and insights and things to think about that maybe you wouldn't have already come up with yourself. So a couple things I want to just caution as we're starting with this, things that I feel are like are good tips is first to look at AI more as an intern and not being some like all-knowing guru. It's going to be fast, but it's still going to make mistakes. And so, it is not going to replace like the years of experience, the training and the knowledge that you have as a change management professional. So always use your best judgment. Always look at it as a first pass, not the final word. And again, kind of looking at it as an assistant or an intern and not, the all-knowing expert. You definitely want to be careful that you're not putting confidential data into public tools. A lot of companies now have secure company approved environments, and you want to make sure that you're putting their company confidential information in that environment and not in just a generic public one. You want to make sure that you're, doing the right thing by protecting your people, protecting the project. And so that's something that's really smart. As I already said, starting small, I think is a great strategy. Don't try to overhaul your whole entire workflow at once. I think, again, just kind of beginning with one thing. It can be those first draft of communications. It can be meeting minutes. It can be whatever, kind of test the results, get used to it, find out, what is the best way to use it. But again, keeping it balanced with the things of not, the thought of not losing what makes us human and is our true value add to the situation. But it gives you a starting point to go from. And, for us as change management leads, I think we always are thinking about this, but you can never forget the empathy. You can have these words on the page, but, are they sincere? Can people trust it? I think one of the saddest examples I've ever heard is, someone, and I guess it's alleged, but they wrote a message to their folks, that were basically getting let go in part because they're going to be, the company's going to start using more of AI. And it definitely appeared that the message itself was AI generated. But either way, it was asking, these folks to lean on AI to kind of help them in their job search and, for mental health support. And I think that's just the wrong thing to say. I mean, if you're an employee going through something like that, the last thing you want is something that you think is an AI generated email. And you certainly don't want it to tell you that, hey, yeah, AI is taking your job, but you can use AI to find another job. I mean, that just is just so tone deaf. And so we want to make sure that we're not forgetting who we are and, and what makes sense. And yes, we're using AI. It is a tool, but, let's be mindful with what we're doing. Okay, so to wrap it up, again, just want to underscore, as I've done in previous talks, that AI is not here to take our jobs as change managers, but we can use it for sure to take some of the busy work, some of the non-value add work, and make our lives easier. And so, again, I think using ProSize Kaya, I think is a great way for those that do have access to that to kind of delve into, what are some of the ways that we can use AI in our work. But again, don't forget to always think of the human side of what we're doing and making sure that we're staying balanced, we're staying focused, strategic. But, most of all, let's continue to be real and, show up and do the right things, while we're on the job. So my challenge would be is just to pick one routine task, maybe drafting an email or summarizing a stakeholder interview, give that first draft to AI, see what that does, give it your edits, and then just really sit back and have a retrospective, with yourself and like, okay, how did that go? How can I incorporate this? How can I share what I'm doing? How can I continue to make sure that what I'm doing is balanced and ethical? I think those are things that, all of us should be looking at. So thanks for listening. And until next time.